there's this great study that's been going on called the AMP study, of which BlackArrow, the 4As, and some of the folks we've had on to the show today have taken part. And that was sort of testing dynamic ad insertion and different formats on VOD on traditional linear, broadcast models. And there were some interesting findings, but what's happening is the disruption of linear television is coming from startups and new entities, technology companies that are providing these sort of new functionality of digitizing television. And today we have Keith.
Hi.
Keith K.
How you
because
doing?
his last name is quite challenging to pronounce, so I'm going to let him introduce himself from BlackArrow, which is one of those great disruptors about whom I'm quite bullish. So Keith, I'd love for you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about BlackArrow.
Yeah, so my name's Keith Kryszczun. I'm SVP of Sales at BlackArrow, and we are a technology service provider for advanced advertising for pay TV providers as well as content providers. So these are your large pay TV providers, Comcast, Time Warner, et cetera, and the large cable operators or broadcast networks that are driving most of the viewing on those platforms.
So, the AMP study, would it be okay if we could talk about that for a few minutes?
Absolutely.
So I know that we're just entering live in-market tests, right? Yep. So you guys have sort of done some lab tests, stage 1 and stage 2, and now we're ending the live trials. I'm really curious, I would love to sort of hear you just recap that in regards to two things. One is format, because you tested differing pod scenarios, et cetera, and loads from traditional linear, but also what you saw as far as receptivity of long form content, brands, what was the perception of a viewer with advertising on VOD? Yeah,
I think the things that stuck out for me with it were, well, one, there was no research for this, really the focus on time-shifted television, specifically on the VOD platform, which is a really highly engaged viewing environment. And I think the things that stuck out for me were, one is that the viewers were fine with commercials. They're like, this is TV, it's a big screen experience, I'm used to commercials. The second thing was, which was really interesting, which is that they kind of were like, this is a different viewing experience for me than when I just watch things on linear and kind of jump to a channel or do some channel surfing. This is content that I really, really want to watch, that I set aside my own window to watch that content. And do something different with my attention, because I have a heightened awareness on the show and the commercial programming, therefore do something different with me. I think that means you can run the same ads, but I think definitely you have an opportunity to engage with the viewer and take advantage of that heightened awareness because it's programming that they really want to watch. And so that's the thing that I think could really change the game for these time-shifted platforms in the future, is because you don't have to just kind of replicate the commercial linear ad load, though you can. I think that'll be fine. It's what can you do different, because one of the things with dynamic ad insertion is you can change those ad loads dynamically, right? Not that you want to change them all the time, but I think based on, after 7 days or after 14 days or after 3 days, and based on the length of the programming, you can really start to get creative and say, we're going to do a limited number of spots, but we're going to do an exclusive with an advertiser that tells a story. Right. We're going to do one long ad in the beginning, and then there's no interruptions with commercials after that. So I think you can do those types of things.
I want to tie this back to a question that I posed to Nancy about when will dynamic ad insertion come on television, and specify something about BlackArrow's tech, right? You guys work with Atlas and DoubleClick and third-party ad servers that are used every day in deployments with agencies and brands, right, and publishers.
Yep.
And I was at the AMP presentation where you gave sort of round 1 and round 2 results and research findings. Ipsos did that presentation, and Marcianne Jenks, who's I believe the SVP at Verizon, one of the participants
at Comcast.
Sorry, one of the participants made a very salient comment. He was being sort of questioned about targeted advertising, and it was so spot on. He said, we can target, we can do addressable advertising on TV, but it's of no value until we can dynamically insert ads and sort of optimize, et cetera. Yep. So I would love your thoughts on, is VOD going to be the hockey stick? Is this what changes television advertising because of what your technology is enabling?
Yeah, I mean, the way we look at it is that we think VOD will be the first platform on TV where true one-to-one addressability happens at scale, right? Because the VOD has higher penetration than DVR right now. If you look at the VOD viewing market in terms of Nielsen numbers, it's as big as the online video market, but the online video market for advertising is like $2.2 billion if you look at eMarketer. VOD is like 60 million, but it's all primetime content. There's no advertising clutter, right? It's a living room experience where they're not very distracted. And I think with regards to our rollout, we're rolled out at Comcast right now, so we can do this right now.
Right.
We publicly announced a week or 2 weeks ago Rogers as well, which is leading the market in Canada. We're full digital footprint at Rogers right now, and I think with those two operators in North America, you're going to see the other folks start to light up their full markets.
So back to the starting point also of GRP and questions there, does the fact that now VOD audience is being counted as part of the GRP ratings for networks, does that affect the potential of sort of VOD to be a fertile ground to try new models, new ad formats, et cetera? Does that impair you in any way?
So right now, I think what most of the networks, at least that we talk to, are like, we want to monetize through C3 because it's kind of the accepted industry currency for live and time-shifted television. I think once C3 ends, you have a lot of option there in terms of ad load and creating new inventory for advertisers. I think once addressability comes along, the question will be is on a per spot basis, is that time-shifted inventory worth more as C3, or is it worth more as a new type of addressable spot, right, that has some targeting information?
That's one heck of an econometrics model to build, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and honestly, we don't care. We want to make time-shifted television really valuable, and if we start out after C3, that's great. And I think there's a ton of value. And if you look, at viewing that's happening outside the C3 window, that's the piece that's growing, right? It used to be, what, 90% or 95%, and that's why they chose the 3-day
right.
Mark off. But more and more of that window, especially in some of the primetime shows, like I think Modern Family and some of these shows, have tons of viewing outside that window. We think that is just low-hanging fruit for both the networks as well as the pay TV guys to bring really valuable spots to advertisers for that viewing.
That's my hope, because one of the things that I believe was tested in the AMP study was a longer form sort of branded entertainment, right? And there was a lot of receptivity. So I'm hoping that what your BlackArrow's technology is enabling will bring a greater runway of experimentation for advertisers in television.
And
so
I know in the phase 3 stuff, the in-market stuff, that's like one of the primary areas of focus, which is let's really test the ROI metrics for different types of long-form advertising, because I think it's critical. If you have the flexibility there in terms of the technology, which is there today, it's definitely something they want to measure against.
Okay. Keith, thank you.
Great, thanks
a lot. I'm really grateful for the time. It was great to see you, and thanks for coming out, taking time at NAB. Send my regards to your team at home.
Absolutely.